everyone, thanks for joining us for another episode of The Ghost Furnace. I am Bond, and I'm here with my cohort, Nick Pennsylvania. How you doing, Nick?
Doing real good.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. This is our first episode of the Queen's Year, or the King's Year 2025. I'm excited to see what this year has in store for us, because 2024 was a pretty big year, no matter how you slice it. So very excited to see what's coming next.
Yeah, and we kicked off 2025 in a good way. You and I and my wife, we went out hiking a bit in the early morning.
Yeah.
And at a place where you had found a Bigfoot print or something like it.
You
want to recap that real quick?
Yeah, so I'll need to find the photo. I'll put it in the show notes. I know I have it on our Instagram if you all head out over to there. But what this is a place called Preston Park, which is a local park in the town that we're near, and it's a really cool place, lots of history. But it's only been like a public park for a few decades, and they've been doing a lot of renovations to it and really kind of building it up over the years. Really nice place. So we went for a hike there, and one of the reasons that I love this park so much is one of the first times that I was there, I was going around the back of the old residence house that has a really nice little, like, you look over this nice big pond and this huge field, and it's a really nice spot. And what I found was what looked like a large footprint, like a big, like if you told me that someone took a Bigfoot track stencil, put it on the ground, and then cut out like a 2-inch deep, cut it out with a saw or something, that's what it looked like in like the turf. It didn't look like a footprint, but it was like in the shape of a footprint, like with the toes and
a distinct foot-shaped impression it didn't look like it was pressed in.
It did look like it was pressed in, yeah.
Like it was like a cookie cutter.
Right, yeah. Cookie cutter is a good way of putting it, yeah. And it was just one of those things where it was just like back where, if you were trying to put something somewhere so someone would see it, that wasn't a great spot for it. Like it was by the corner of the house, It was just really strange. And again, I don't necessarily think it was paranormal, but it was weird. And that was one of the many things that I liked about this park early on. So I was glad I was able to share it with you all finally.
Yeah, especially since as we had told you, we've lived here a good while in the town right next door, and had never been there, driven past it a bunch, but had never actually ventured in. No bit of the history. We've talked about some of the history here too, I believe. But
right,
the only strange thing that happened on our time out on the morning of January 1st was we were down in a low part. We were by a stream, and you said, I cannot believe I haven't seen any birds. And then no sooner you said that, we walk around a bit and a bunch of juncos start flying around.
Yeah,
and we see a whole bunch of birds. That's all we see.
Yeah, we hadn't seen a darn thing, and I'm a birder, so I'm always looking, and we came around this corner. I said that like you just mentioned, and we scared up a bunch of juncos and some
jays.
There were some jays. We saw those golden crown kinglets shortly after, so
there were those two the red-bellied woodpeckers as well.
Red-bellied woodpeckers. Yeah, there's some downy woodpeckers. There's all kinds of stuff. But it was just funny how didn't see a darn thing until we said it out loud, and then suddenly they were everywhere. So it was just kind of fun. It was just a nice little thing. But I'd like to go back to that park more and start exploring it on a more regular basis. Because the cool thing about it, like a lot of places near a lot of towns, you don't have to go very far to feel like you're kind of like out away from everything. It's funny because you hear about that a lot in a lot of like paranormal encounters or things where people say, oh, I was just in this like little park, and you're like, how in the world could it be strange there?
Right.
But that's part of the fun.
Especially since here, which again, probably because we walked around the entire parameter of the property itself.
Right.
We were almost always within sight, or even when we couldn't see, we were always aware that there was a house.
Right. Stuff like that.
Or we came across a tree stand for a hunter.
Right. Yeah. So not like dangerous out in the middle of nowhere, but enough that like, it was just a nice place for a hike. So it was really nice. Like, I'm big on first day hikes. I think it's important to start the year, even just symbolically, on a fun and, good note like that. So I was glad
this is despite the fact that you ended the year with a 5K as well.
Yeah. So I inadvertently scheduled myself to do a few more miles than what I anticipated within 24 hours. So I was feeling it yesterday pretty bad. Today, I took the day off from doing anything too strenuous today, and I'm happy about that. So
Well,
yeah,
I happen to know for a fact that you have no idea what we're going to talk about. I gave you something to look up, something new and
yes,
novel. And as you said, if most of the entertaining bits today are just you trying to pronounce these various words, that'll be plenty enough. But you have no real idea why I've asked you to research this thing.
right. I just thought you were pointing me towards a cute little animal, which
And I
is
did.
yeah,
I
which you
did.
did.
I
Yeah,
did. That is
thankfully.
part of it.
It's a good place to start. So yeah, so what Nick asked me to look up is this creature, and it goes by a few different names. And this is from over in like the west side of the island of Papua New Guinea. I am not good at pronouncing things in pretty much in all languages. So I'm going to give you guys the my best take, and I'm going to give you the ones that I think we can go with. So the name that I'm going to go with is the Dingiso, Dingiso, but it's also commonly referred to as a Banda Gazao Zoo, Banda Gazao,
Good pronunciation.
oh, and then Bakaga is one of the other names. I think Deniso is probably the closest. I'm not even, yeah, I'm just not great at any of these.
Now, how
But
would you describe this animal?
so this animal, despite having a few different names, there is only one word for it. It is cute. In my book. So basically, what it is it's a long-tailed marsupial that's found in the forests, like I said, of the west side of New Guinea, over in Indonesia, literally on the other side of the world from where we are. So, like other marsupials that are found over in the area, over in like over in Australia and everything, this one is a considered a tree kangaroo, which when I came across that, I was like, those were not two words that I was familiar with people putting together. So a tree kangaroo is a type of marsupial that basically it stands about 2.5, 3 feet tall, kind of like a kangaroo. The face almost looks kind of like a wallaby face, if you've ever seen one of those.
Yeah, I
Um,
thought very a koala
yeah, kind of
almost.
like a koala too. Yeah, it's kind of really a mix of like you take a koala, a wallaby, and a kangaroo, and you kind of put them together, and you
So
get
basically a tour of Australian marsupials.
a tour de cuteness in Australia. But it lives in these forests and everything. And even though it's called a tree kangaroo, because there are other types of tree kangaroos in that order in that family, um, these ones actually don't spend a ton of time in the trees. They are actually on the ground quite often, and actually walk bipedally quite often. Again, much like you think a normal kangaroo over in Australia, but they live up in these deep jungles and everything at pretty high elevations. They're a threatened species. Well, they're endangered. Excuse me, EN, which is in like the threatened spectrum
Yes.
for conservation. But yeah, they're mainly dark, kind of white and black fur. They have they're mainly kind of black, but they have these kind of white bellies and almost like the white, almost like a stripe underneath them, which kind of reminded me of like the markings on like a sun bear or something like that. Like pretty distinct. Like if you see it, you're like, oh, that's it doesn't look like a for as much as it looks like a koala, kangaroo, and wombat. It's clearly not one of those.
So
Whenever you see it.
here's what we got. We got a fairly big
Hmm.
bipedal mammal walking about. Now
Yes,
you're probably wondering, because this is not the zoological tour with Nick and Bond.
it
You're
could be.
probably wondering why I asked you to look
Yeah.
this thing up. And so here's where I'm going to tie it into some of the things we talk about here. I have long maintained, and then funny enough, when we were on our hike, I said something to this effect, which was the Bigfoot thing is one of those things where people get anytime there's any sort of barrier,
Hmm.
they will invent some aspect of Bigfoot to get around it. So like you brought up the water dwelling Bigfoot and
Oh
everything
yeah,
like
yeah.
this.
We
Yeah.
were the aquatic Bigfoot theory. Yeah, aquatic
Some
ape theory. Yep.
right. I and again, it's not it's very silly. To me, not being presented with evidence that I would say would sway me particularly hard.
Hmm.
So here's where I still here's where I still kind of hold out though. The Bangadizu or however
I like
this
your pronunciation better. You said it more confidently at least. So let's go
you,
with yeah.
if I do anything when I mispronounce things, I don't break a sweat. I don't want to
Right.
give it away that I have no idea
Yeah.
how to say this
Uh,
actually. But okay, so here's the thing.
mhm.
When would you say that this animal, its existence became known to the Occidental world, to the Anglosphere?
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
when did quote
When
unquote
did it
we or
cease being a
Western
yes?
science um well, I mean, like Papua New Guinea is known for, for being pretty rugged and everything. So maybe later than I'd expect, but my history is bad. I'm not sure when stuff was being colonized, unfortunately, over there. But I don't know, maybe 30s, 40s. It has kind of that vibe
Oh
for
yeah,
me.
no, that's not a bad
Yeah.
guess. That's not a
Like,
bad guess. It's
yeah.
actually 1980 something.
Oh, geez. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So later. Yeah.
right. So here's where I'm getting at.
Hmm.
Obviously, I wanted to bring up a few larger animals that
Okay.
have only really been confirmed
Hmm.
to the world at large. Because again, we
Right.
say like, okay, there was a time pandas were
Yeah.
cryptids. Pandas,
Right. Hmm. Right. Right.
silverbacked gorillas were cryptids. They had been all these things had been reported on, but
Hmm.
they were never again in the Anglosphere and in much of Europe and North and South America. They had never really been verified. Obviously, there were some people that knew they existed. Obviously,
Hmm.
there have been
Well,
depictions and
whatever
everything of
for this little friend, like there would have probably been locals that knew about it.
exactly.
Like that would have probably I assume, because again it's a bigger animal. It's not like a little bug, you know.
Right,
Um,
exactly. The fact that we are still discovering species of insect and deep water,
right.
this isn't wholly surprising. But yeah,
Yeah.
so there we go. We say the West, but really, it's not just the West because there
Hmm.
is a culture of science
Hmm.
that taxonomizes and studies and kind of puts these pieces together. So people
Hmm.
from that outside world, that scientific world that are confirming and putting all these pieces together,
Right.
this animal was only really confirmed in the 1980s. The early 1980s was when first footage of it
Hmm.
was so pretty wild. So again, coming back, so a lot of the Bigfoot stuff specifically I say this is a little reaching. We're getting into some silly
Hmm.
places because we are making extremely convoluted stories to make this thing real. It's probably
Hmm.
just not. But I wanted to present a few different animals today that are on the larger side.
Right.
Only one of them is aquatic,
Hmm.
and they were all discovered in the 20th and 21st century. And maybe discover is not the right idea. Based on everything I just said, maybe I
Became
should say
identified by
yes.
Western
I
taxonomy,
wouldn't say
you know.
Western. I would just say the
Yeah.
scientific. Yeah,
Scientific, yeah.
yeah. Let's say that.
Added into a scientific classification of domain, kingdom, what is it?
I
Class,
agree.
phylum, those that thing. Yeah.
So I want to start. I want to start with the oldest one on
Okay.
my list because again, 20th century. Okay, here's another mammal for you. Now you did something really nice with the animal I had you look up. You really just you described it as being like a combination of all these things because
Yeah.
like how do you explain something that you've never seen before? You go to what's
Right.
familiar.
Hmm.
What would you get if you combined a zebra, a giraffe, and a deer?
A zebra, a giraffe, and a deer.
Yeah.
Um, that's hard to put together in my head. Because the zebra and deer, they're both like ungulates. They both got hooves, you know.
Mm.
But I don't think zebras and deer are very closely related at all.
No,
um,
no, you
and
wouldn't.
then a giraffe is a giraffe closer to a deer or a horse? I'm honestly not sure. I have a hard time imagining what those three together looks like.
Well,
So
okay, so I'm going to give you a quick rundown and I'm going to show you some
okay.
of this animal, and of course, people can go look these up. So, part of the reason why all but one of these animals
Hmm.
took so long to become known to the greater, wider world, and specifically the scientific world,
Right.
confirmed populations, is because most of these animals are extremely isolated.
Hmm.
This one is in Central Africa. If you go to the Congo, the
Okay.
what is DNC, the Congo,
Yeah.
this animal's only found there, and it was only confirmed to exist by in 1901. Sir Harry Johnston brought two skulls and a skin back, and
Hmm.
since then
Okay.
they have been further documented. But they have long been known. It's again, here I go, not breaking a sweat. No one knows how badly I'm mispronouncing it when I say okapi.
A copy. Okay.
Yeah, Okapi. Let me bring this up for you, and we're going to be quiet a second. I'm going to let Brendan watch this, and then I want him to
Hmm.
describe it. So if you haven't already, refrain from looking it up until you can hear Brendan
A
paint you a
reaction.
picture. This doesn't
Oh
really
my
have some.
gosh. Okay.
Look at those fancy pants.
That's
Okay,
not okay. Yeah. I've never seen this
I'm
before.
gonna play this for you,
Please
and
do.
then we can talk
Yeah.
about it.
Okay. I mean,
Okay.
that's pretty incredible. I
So
mean,
we're
yeah,
coming back.
I had never seen one of those before. So basically, what this animal looks like for those of you who haven't looked it up yet, and how do you spell it again? Okay,
OKAPI.
okay, a
And of
copy.
course, it has other names as well,
Right,
because as you can
right.
imagine, there's a bunch of different peoples in that area, and they all have a somewhat different name
The
for
different
it.
names, yeah. But so what it looks like is again, it's closer to a horse in some ways, but it literally looks like it's wearing zebra pants. Like again, like nice like zebra pant leggings or something like that is what it looks like it's wearing. But the how it stance is, it has like a bigger like neck, and the face almost looks more like a deer face rather than like a horse, you know. It looks cute. I'd hang out with one. Yeah, it's a really cool looking animal. But that's a large. It said what stands like, you know, a meter and a half at the shoulder.
Yeah,
So
something
that's
like
not
that.
they're not small,
No,
you know. It's
no,
not
this
like
isn't
a
like a chicken-sized thing
yeah.
running around.
Hmm.
And so they are actually most closely related to the giraffe.
Okay, so
And
it's on
they
that
have the
side of the
tongues to
yeah.
show it. It's an
Okay.
18 inch on average.
Oh wow.
A
Okay. Yeah.
mature okapi will have, like, on average, an 18-inch tongue. Here's what I find really fascinating about them. Not only, okay, the Congo is a large country,
Hmm.
but they inhabit not a huge swath of it, but it's a decent sized area. But when you think of Africa, and even
Right.
just breaking it down to sub-Saharan Africa as a continent, it
Right.
is a big place.
Big. Like
Right. So they
it's hard
occupy,
to overstate how big it is.
right, you
Yeah.
can't miss
Yeah.
Africa on a map.
Yeah. Oh,
And
jeez.
they do not inhabit a very large swath of Africa.
Hmm.
That's for sure. But the thing I find most interesting about them beyond that fact
Hmm.
is that they have an extremely varied diet. They mostly only feed, apparently, on plants that
Hmm.
are ground plants predominantly, but they are known to eat plants that are toxic to other animals, and
Oh,
it
okay. Oh,
doesn't
there's a word
seem
for
to
that.
have. Yeah, I
There's a
bet
word
you
for
would
that.
have a word for that.
Yeah, there is a word for like animals that like are beneficial to people and livestock because they target those kinds of plants. I can't remember
And
what it is, but
and
anyway.
they it's documented that they have, through doing research and scat and
Hmm.
whatnot, they have identified more than 100 scat with more than 100 different
Toxic plants
remnants
in
of
it.
plants, not toxic, just
Okay, but
plants in
it's so but they eat a
general.
lot of different. So they don't just go after
Yeah,
one. I wonder why they haven't.
unlike pandas, which I'm
Yeah,
not even going to get into
yeah.
here
Like, but like,
today.
I wonder
Again,
why they have such a small range then. like so
Right.
specific.
You
Like,
would
as you
think
think
they'd be
you'd think if
pretty
you put
adaptable.
take them other places, they would be good to go, babe. I mean,
They'd just be hoovering the veg.
right. I mean, we got a kudzu problem. We should find out if they like kudzu down south. I mean,
I think this is like introducing cane toads.
maybe it is, yeah. But again, if we have a whole bunch of these guys running around,
That would
like,
be definitely preferable to cane toads because
right,
those things
definitely
are
preferable.
terrifying.
And like, yeah, it's I
They
can think
have
of worse
far fewer
fates.
postulates than the cane toad,
Ugh,
and
yeah.
cane toads are the worst. But if you would like to meet one,
Hmm.
they do live in some zoos in the area because
Okay.
again, all but one of these that we're going to talk about
Hmm.
are endangered. One we don't
Right.
even know, but probably not endangered.
Right.
The closest zoos to us that
Hmm.
have these animals, Okapi, Philadelphia,
Hmm.
Columbus, Ohio. So you can
Oh,
actually
really?
go out
Okay.
and shake hands with one.
Well, that's interesting. Now, it's funny whenever you mention the zebra and everything, are you familiar with the local celebrity Zorse around here?
No.
So there is a Zorse named Zeus that lives a few towns over. You can drive by and see him. He's a half horse, half zebra. It's as exciting as you think. I'll have to drop you a pin and show you where he lives.
Now, one of the things I find really funny, I just want to say a couple more things about these. It's in the 1890s, Henry Morton Stanley.
Hmm.
It says in this little thing we watched together with lots of footage of these. He was intrigued, fascinated because he heard tale of a and saw a peculiar type of donkey.
Yeah, I'd I'd be intrigued too. So
Right. Like that just mesmerizing. Like
yeah,
I saw a donkey, but it was a little unlike other donkeys I've
yeah.
known. But these were also apparently the word had gotten around. People started saying they were seeing these weird things. It became there was a little bit of a hunt to find one, not quite to the extent of the panda or the gorilla, but
Hmm.
they were I've read it that they were known as like unicorns of sort
Okay, so
because they were
they
just so
were
hard to
known to
find.
be elusive. Yeah.
Yeah, so we didn't know about this until 1901. Now, an animal, and I won't spend nearly as much time on this one because I've seen them. We have them in zoos in Pennsylvania, most notably Clyde Peeling's Reptile Land. I don't think anybody's going to be particularly surprised about this one or have a hard time pronouncing it, but the Komodo dragon.
Uh
When do you 1910
oh, really?
is
See, again,
when the
that's
sign
still later than I would
right.
have. That's yeah.
And
Because
again,
again, they're
another
big. You can't
very
miss them.
weird. But have
Yeah.
you ever looked up their native habitat?
Well, aren't they in the like? Is it Galapagos? Or am I way off?
I th I
I might be
I'm gonna
way
pull.
off.
I have it on a map here because I
Yeah.
can. The Komodo dragon has a. He's just a remarkably small native habitat. They are just north of Australia here.
Oh, I was on the wrong side of the planet. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't mind me. Um.
So we were in Papua New Guinea earlier. That's where we
Yeah.
started, and we are just south of Indonesia here, and there
Hmm.
you go. That's it. That's all.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. At Clyde Peeling's Reptile Land, by the way, they have a snake that has a prehensile nose, and its range is even smaller.
Smaller.
Its native range, the snake,
Hmm.
is about the size of our county.
Oh, wow. Ugh.
Yeah, imagine that. So Komodo dragon, I don't know why I still have this up, but and I don't want to give it away, even though you probably saw it already. So the Okapi, 1901, the Komodo dragon, 1910. The animal that you got the joy of researching today.
Dingy so. Yep.
Yeah, let's just call it Denise.
Denise.
Denise, we first met Denise in the early 1980s. So again, all of these are land animals. All of
Hmm.
these are pretty big. These
Yeah.
Yeah, a Komodo dragon can weigh as much as an adult man, especially in captivity. And
Hmm. Oh, I bet. Yeah.
so then there's the last one, which was only in this century confirmed. And this is the spookiest of them.
Okay.
This is
You
one
have
of
my
those
attention.
animals that we said if aliens landed and are living among us,
Hmm.
cephalopods.
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
The giant squid. Now we had
Oh,
you're uncomfortable. I love them.
yeah, no, they're really cool. But they are freaky. Like yeah, like,
Well, yeah, that's exactly I feel not on. But when would you say that we had confirmed sightings,
well, because I
confirmed
know, yeah,
film?
film. Well, wasn't the film? So I know that we had them like washing up on shore places probably
Yes,
for quite some time. But wasn't it like in like the early 2000s
it was. Well, I
that
guess I kind
they
of said it already when I
did
said this
you
century, but like
okay, yeah.
2004.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was like a Japanese whaler or something.
it was actually a Japanese scientific expedition, I do
Oh, was it?
believe.
Okay, that makes me feel
Yeah,
better about it. Okay.
and
Yeah.
and of course, but this is not that film, but this is the one that freaks me out. The Magna
Oh,
Pina squid. Have you seen
yeah, the
this?
big fin. Yeah, I actually did an art thing on these once.
It's amazing.
They don't look real. It's one of
No,
those it doesn't look real. Um,
it looks like an H.G. Wells or a Lovecraftian
yeah,
thing.
it's very Lovecraftian. I cannot imagine being on a drilling rig and knowing one of these is like within 1,000 miles. I would
Right.
just,
Even though that's like a mile and a half deep,
yeah, still too
not
close.
comfortable. Still too
Yeah,
close.
still too close.
Right. So
Um,
there was, and I think it was the Discovery
hmm
Channel a few years, about 10, 12 years back. They had caught more footage
hmm
of one of these giant squids off Japan.
right.
And the scientist who I was watching this interview with her, she says that we're talking about a squid the size of a 2 to 4 story house with
hmm
an eye, just one eye bigger than your head.
hmm
It's amazing.
Yeah, they're magnificent creatures. They really are.
And they live in
And
the deepest parts of the ocean
hmm yeah,
because usually when they come up to shore or they're that close, they're dying.
they're expiring for one reason or another. And again, if they're as I know that like squids, octopus, and cephalopods are like not as related as we think they are. Um, but if these giant squids are as smart as octopi, then they are smart creatures,
Right.
too, which is just like, I don't know. It's just cool. Like it makes you, again, like whether on in the sea or on land, um, anytime things like this of any real size are discovered, like it does, I think you'd agree then that it does add some credence to at least the willingness for people to speculate of being like, okay, well, like could there be other things out there that we have yet to again taxonomize for science,
You're
or
right.
confirm existence of,
And that's exactly what I'm getting at. It's
yeah,
again, it's one of those things where I find this idea of this creature thing very far-fetched. However, there are these things. Now again, the squid is almost like a separate thing because especially when you get to a certain depth, the
right.
ocean is about as unexplored as parts of our solar system. It feels
Mm-hmm.
like. Certainly, finding new and even large, new, crazy animals down there is not surprising to me, but it is a reminder that, yeah, there is there are still things left unturned.
For
The
sure.
world has gotten very small, but we cannot
Uh,
get ourselves into convincing each other that we've seen everything yet.
right. Right.
And so that's one of the reasons why I do hold out that there could be things, even whether I believe in that specific thing or not. So
Right.
that
And
was just,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, no, and I think that that's why a lot of the what we often refer to as the flesh and blood crypto community out there that like thinks that certain cryptid species are strictly just undiscovered animals. Like, Bigfoot is a North American wood ape, the chupacabra is some sort of a dog. Things like that. Even thunderbirds, like we've talked about, are just large versions of existing birds. Like there's no spiritual or metaphysical elements to them. It makes you understand why those people might believe that, and why the kind of search for some of that evidence is at least interesting to people and adds to the conversation. Because like some of the things that I think of whenever we talk of, especially like the you were mentioning like the deep sea stuff. I don't know if we were talked about it on here. Are you familiar with the bloop? BLOOP.
Yes, I am, and I believe it to be a geological event.
Yes. So that was so for those of you who are not familiar with the folkloric bloop. What it was, and this is off the top of my head, so please forgive me if I'm getting this wrong, but in the mid to late 90s, Noah had some basically microphones in the ocean like it does, listening to whatever Noah does, which is pretty cool. They captured a super low, insanely high amplitude sound that for a long, long time, everyone was like, this fits the profile of a large creature. But there is no known creature that can make a sound this low, this loud, this long. And so a lot of folks, especially in the cryptozoological community, but also again in the scientific community, because it was like data that Noah had. It wasn't like,
Yeah.
out there something random.
And real quick, for clarification, NOAA is National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration.
Yes, 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 yeah. Thank you for clarifying. But so that was something that was considered not to say unsolved, but a lot of people use that as evidence for many, many years of like an example of how there's stuff out there that we just don't have. We just don't know about yet, which is really, really cool. Now, I believe in the relatively late, like in like the 2010s, maybe, they did confirm while listening to, I think it was like ice moving or something, that they did basically confirm. They're like, nope, this was just ice moving, because they were able to like confirm, like, okay, this ice moved here, we captured the sound here, it correlates.
You are correct in all of these statements you
Oh,
made.
am I?
Yes,
Okay, good.
yes, you
Wow.
are.
You watch enough Discovery Channel, and some of this stuff sticks with you.
Do you ever walk
Um,
around the kitchen humming the da 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 da? Because I do.
um,
I
but
did.
uh, but yeah. So, but the bloop is an example. Just like there are other things out there that, especially in the ocean, people see things and they're like, man, there has to be more out there. Like another one, and again, I know I'm speaking off the cuff, so apologies here because I'm sure I'm getting some stuff wrong. But there was a relatively famous great white shark that I believe this was in the late 90s, early 2000s, that was like it was like huge. It was some like 19-foot long female great white shark that had been tagged with one of these like one of these sensors that like tracked her up and down the coast and took other took other data and everything. What was confirmed, what happened was this sensor suddenly, whenever they were near some kind of a continental shelf or something, this sensor shoots down like 5,000 feet uh, to like a really low temperature, super high pressures, and then stays down there for a while, then comes back up, and the sensor is recovered. And a lot of people looked at that as evidence of like a megalodon or something eating the shark, because it's like, what could possibly take a 19-foot long, female great white shark down 5,000 feet, eat it, digest it, and then send the sensor back up? So there are things like that happen, that science does say like, hey, here's this data, and it makes people want to draw really wild conclusions,
Yeah.
And I think that, I don't know, that's where, again, with the
No,
flesh
no,
and blood
no,
stuff,
no.
I get.
I want to explore that one some other
Yeah.
time because I am not familiar with that
Oh,
story.
I'll
But
find
I
it. Maybe it's been explained since I saw it last, but
Well,
I'll look
that's
into
what I'm
that.
wondering, but let's put a pin on that.
Yeah.
But you brought up the bloop. and it made me think about the
Mm-hmm.
wow signal,
Oh, that's
which
that's a great example. Yeah,
the
yeah,
bloop thing, because I remember when
yeah,
that happened. And it set me off on a course, and so I was reading about the wow signal and everything. So that's another one we'll have to talk about.
yeah.
Just yet to be explained, potentially never explainable noises and whatnot. But yeah, it goes back to coming back to the cryptid things. I know I've
Right.
joked that cryptozoology is kind of a self-defeating thing because
Mm-hmm.
the moment you can be taxonomized, it ceases to be cryptid. But here are
Right.
some animals that, again, with the Komodo dragon, with the okapi, with the giant squid,
Yeah.
these were all, it's at one point cryptid animals. It's not just that they were hinted to exist, but there were
Mm-hmm.
stories around them, and there was speculation about them not being real and whatnot.
Right.
So, with those confirmed things, just within the last 124 years,
Mm-hmm.
that's a very modern time period and whatnot when,
Yeah, and yeah.
all things considered.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely does fuel, as you were reading about, it definitely does fuel people who want to believe or who have seen or experienced something and they feel certain they
Mm-hmm.
are like those people who live among those animals and they know that these things are real, but the world has yet to catch up. It
Right.
it fuels them as well. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, it's easy for folks to kind of draw the correlation. You say, okay, generally speaking, if you go to a relatively remote area in, whatever part of the world, but if you go to a relatively remote area that hasn't had a ton of, again, mainstream science looking at it specifically, and you have a lot of folks who live there saying, yeah, there's something lives up on the mountain. And if there is a folkloric history of that happening over generations, there's been enough times, like you kind of showed with these examples, where those people are proven to be right, by science eventually kind of catching up to what they kind of already know. So you take that filter or that paradigm and you put it over, Bigfoot in the Appalachian Mountains or up in Oregon, or you put it over something anywhere else, and it's like, okay, yeah, I see why it at least fits into that paradigm. I think that's a really interesting thing to bring up. And again, I had never heard of a lot of these creatures, or at least one of these creatures, two of these creatures. One of the things that I think is interesting when I was looking, I was just while we were talking, bringing up the Dingiso again, and apparently there was a lot of folklore around the people that live near this thing.
Yes.
They called it the Old Man of the Woods because it stands on two legs so often, and there was a lot of people that think that it's like a spiritual creature in a lot of ways, and
Yeah,
it's
it's my understanding they
like,
tie into ancestral worship and everything.
yeah, it sounds a lot like other stuff we've heard other places, so like it kind of fits that mold. So I don't know, that's really interesting. I definitely learned something tonight.
Yeah. And if you've learned something tonight, or you know of another cryptid that was
Yes.
only recently fallen from the pages of cryptozoology, how can the people tell us about it?
Yeah,
How
you
can the
can.
people tell us their thoughts on the fancy pants that is the okapi?
I'd love to hear people's thoughts. Yeah, you can all find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at the Ghost Furnace Podcast, or you can send us an email at the Ghost Furnace Podcast at gmail.com.